Hey everybody, I'm Adrian from FootageCrate.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make yourself look real cool like this. Turn it off, turn it off! Yeah, I know, that was a lot to handle. There's a lot going on in that shot, but if you give me just a second, I'll explain it. Oh my god, another gun tutorial. I know. But this one's gonna have some good tips in it, so just take it easy. So the first thing you gotta do is motion track your gun, and as you can see, mine is shaking around wildly. I thought it would be funny. Turns out it's not that funny, it's just a nightmare. So yeah, I'm not going to bore you with the motion tracking because I did do it by hand, and it took about 6 years to do. I'm showing it here sped up on the screen. But once it's been tracked, you'll get this null object that is shaky, just like your gun. Check that out, that's perfect. And what you want to do is make yourself a new light, and you want it to be a spotlight, and you want your cone angle to be like 0, and you have to name it emitter, just like that. You can put a number after it if you're going to have more than one of these, that's fine, but it has to start with the word emitter. So let's click OK, and it's going to yell at us because we don't have any 3D layers. That's fine. Oh, you know what we got to do? We got to have that light selected, right? Go up to Layer, come down to Transform, and hit Auto Orient. And you need to turn it off because that is going to cause you so many headaches. And you know, it's on by default in a lot of stuff, and I hate it. It's no good. But now our light is no longer auto-oriented, and you can hit the Shift key and parent that light to your gun track so that it will, you know, be parented to your gun track. Right, so now we need to move this light into place. So you don't want to just click and drag and move it around like this because that could jack up the 3D position of the light. So you really don't want to move the Z-axis at all. You do want to move the Y and the X axis. So just move them one at a time and just nudge it into place until it's in the right spot. And now you'll see it's in the right spot on the gun, but it's not quite pointed the right way. So that's no problem. Just click the rotation tool. And what we're going to do is rotate it on the Y axis until that Z axis is pointed away from the gun. And then you're going to want to grab the X axis and you hover over it until you see that X and move it till it's pointed the right way. There we go. Yeah, and now as you can see, we've got this weird laser beam coming out of our gun. Nice. So we're going to set up a particular layer to represent the bullets, and then we're going to base everything else we do off of that layer. And you know, this is gonna be pretty cool. By the way, you guys like my shirt? It says "Fix it in post." This is it. I picked the best frame to show you, to show off my shirt. It's not even important to the tutorial. Anyway, so let's make a new solid, and we'll call it particular bullets. And true to our word, let's add particular. And we're going to need to twirl down our emitter settings and change it from a point to a light. And now you'll see we have some particles coming off of our gun. And if you didn't listen to me before and name the emitter with the word emitter like I told you to, shame on you. But also you can just go up into options and you can change this property here that says light name starts with and call it whatever you want. So you should have listened to me then. Shame that you didn't, but listen to me now if you didn't. All right. So we need to change the emitter size down to 0 on all axes, and we need to change our direction to a directional, and you'll see now they're shooting forward. Really, that's not super obvious, and that's probably because our velocity from motion needs to be turned off as well, and our velocity random, I mean, I guess you can leave it. I'm going to turn it off. I don't think it's going to help us out. And now just turn up your actual velocity. And there you go. You see, this is the stupidest gun ever. But, yeah, so that's working so far. So bullets are really fast, so turn that up really fast. And in fact, you'll really, at this point, you're not really going to see them moving. It's just going to look like a bunch of random dots. And we really can't tell with just our eyeballs how fast these are going. They're hard to see anyway, so I'm going to change the color to black just so we can see the dots better. What we're going to do is we're just going to go to rendering and tick on the motion blur and turn up our opacity boost all the way. So now it's just lines. We need to have something for these to hit, so let's add a new solid, and let's call it floor. And just to help ourselves out, let's add a grid. Boom. And let's make that solid 3-dimensional. The only reason it turned black is because of the light. The solid is in front of the light. And so now it's totally in shadow. It doesn't matter, we're not going to see this anyway. But you want to hold down shift and rotate that on the x-axis until it lays flat. And bring that down on Z until it looks like it's level with your floor plane. I mean, my camera in this scene was a little irregular, so this is going to be kind of difficult to do, but look at this, look at this, look at this. We have this edge here of the house that is a good reference for perspective because it's a straight line, and it just so happens that I got it perfect just like I do everything else. So we're going to leave that as our floor for now, but that is subject to change. Turn that off. Go back to the particular bullets layer, come down to physics, and we want to use the bounce physics for this one. And we want to make our floor layer the floor. And now you're going to see we have our laser beams just bouncing off the floor, which is ridiculous. That's no good. Instead of bouncing, we want them to stick. So under collision event, hit stick. And there, now you can see where the bullets are landing, and that's perfect. That's exactly where I want them, is right in front of me in my cool acting. Problem, they're all in a straight line. My aim is not that good. That's ridiculous. We are going to do a little cheat. You guys like to cheat? We're going to cheat. Come down to the emitter. And we want to add some rotation on the y-axis so that these go in a different direction so they don't all just pile up in a straight line. So twirl down those settings there. On the y rotation, hold down Alt and click the stopwatch. And then we're going to do a simple expression. You want to type wiggle with all lowercase letters and open parentheses. The first number we're going to type is how many times a second you want it to move. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter that much. In this case, let's just hit 10, and then you do a comma, and then how many degrees do you want it to move. And when you're doing rotation, you want to stick to low numbers to start with, because a little bit of rotation really does make a big difference. So Why don't we just start with 5, and we're just going to see how this looks. So that expression's done. You can click out of it. I was wrong. That's not enough. Let's change it to maybe 20. It's still not quite enough. The moral of this tutorial is don't listen to me the first time, but always listen to me the second time. So there we go. We've got our bullet holes appearing in kind of a random fashion. I actually don't think it's quite random enough yet. Let's change it to 80. And now you can change your time variable as well. I mean, if we change that to 50, it doesn't make that much difference. I mean, that is a little bit more random. 50 is actually ridiculous because there's not even 50 frames in a second in this composition. But yeah, that's cool. And then just so they don't all disappear, so we can see where they all end up landing, which again doesn't matter that much, it's just to help ourselves out. Let's go into the life and bring it up to longer than your composition. So this composition is a little over 10 seconds long. So if we just change it to like 12, they'll never ever disappear. So now let's add a new layer that we're going to use to control everything. And this is kind of one of the most important part of this tutorial. This is what's going to make the tutorial cool. It's not going to seem cool at first. It's going to seem dorky and whatever. And on that, we're going to add 2 slider controls. And so this null object is not going to do anything but control our other layer. So twirl open the particular bullets options. You know, you want to twirl open effects and particular and come down to the emitter and set a keyframe for particles per second. And now in this window up here, you want to click on that control so you have your slider back up. Grab this pick whip right here and just grab the slider control. And now this slider affects how many particles per second are going to shoot out of our little gun. And now we can keyframe this, so at any point during our session here, if we don't like what's going on, if we don't like how many bullets there are, we can change it. And that's the best thing about this effect, because there's going to be a lot of different types of particles and stuff, and it would be a real pain if you wanted to change it later on without this slider control. But there's one more thing you need to know. It's that in particular there's a bug where sometimes if you change a parameter, it will not update and you'll get like popping where it remembers that you had a certain amount of particles per second before, and it's like, well, maybe that's what you still want, even though you explicitly told me that that's not what you still want. So that's a pile of crap, and that needs to be fixed. And the way we do that is there's this other parameter called random seed under emitter as well. There it is, random seed. And every time you change the particles per second, that needs to be changed also, which is a pain, but it's not going to be a pain for us. I'm going to add another slider called random seed. And we're going to hit Alt and click the stopwatch for the random seed to add an expression and pick whip it to that slider. And now just every time you update the original slider, you should just change to random seed as well, and that will get rid of any problems. Let's get to keyframing our particles, okay? So we're going to put all our keyframes on this control layer. So at the beginning here, this is where the gun starts shooting like as fast as I want it to. So we're going to set a keyframe here and make it whatever our highest value is going to be. So check this out. If we look at our composition settings, yours might be a little different depending on your camera or whatever, but in mine it's about 24 frames per second. And we don't want a muzzle flash on every single frame, because then it would be just like there's a big muzzle flash type to the, or tracked to the front of your gun, and you know, that's not what you want, because you want it flashing, so it's like shooting. So you kind of want a muzzle flash on every other frame, at the most. So at our highest point, we're going to have it shooting 12 bullets a second, because that is half of 24. So 12 might not seem like a lot, but it's going to look like a lot in this effect. So I want it to kind of ramp up to 12, so we're going to start it at 0. And now it's going to start shooting more and more, and now it's shooting too much. Oh no, 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 no. And okay, about here, it looks like it's going to start calming down. So you don't have to be too precise with your keyframes, but we'll set another keyframe there, and make it 12 also. And then here, I'm not shaking around like a madman, so it looks like it's not shooting anymore. So you can change that to 0. And then here I kind of like shake out the rest of the bullets. So add another keyframe there and kind of crank this up to something else. I'm gonna do like 7. And then let's add another keyframe for 0. Okay, here's what we have so far. It doesn't look great. But yeah, there's your bullets shooting out all crazy. And we're gonna start making it look pretty good. So I have pre-prepared some sprites that we're going to use, and I'm going to open up the one called Flash Particle. And this is a muzzle flash from Footage Crate. And actually, what I've done is I put a time remap on it so that it's just the flashes, because this clip has like some pauses in it, as you can see, because it's meant to be used as is, but we're not using it like that. So I've just time remapped it so that it's just the flashes. And as you can see, my composition settings, you want it less than 400 by 400 because Particular doesn't like huge sprites like that. So I've got it 400 by 200, and I have the origin of the muzzle flash coming right out of the center. And that's going to be a recurring theme. Everything we need, every particle we make is going to have to originate from the center of the composition that it's in, so that it ends up being in the right place. So let's pull that into our main composition and turn it off because we don't really need to see it. And we're going to duplicate our bullets. And this is how we're going to make everything, by duplicating and changing stuff. So we're going to call this flashes, and let's go into Particular, change the velocity to 0 for now, because flashes don't move. I'm going to solo it on the background, so we're only dealing with this. It's just kind of leaving stuff in the air, which is weird, but it's the right kind of weird, because that's what we need. We're going to change our particle to a sprite, and we're going to select the flash particle, and the time sampling should be random still frame. So our little composition here has a bunch of different choices of muzzle flashes, so it's just going to pick a random one for each particle. Can't see those particles, they're too tiny. So let's change our particle size to be much bigger, and now they're less tiny. And you can even change the size random a little bit. And now we need to change the life of these particles, just like I'm changing your guys' life by making this tutorial. So select life, and remember before when I said our composition was 23.976 frames per second? So let's just go in here, because this life is in seconds. Let's make it 1 second divided by 23.976. Did you guys know that these parameters here can do math for you? Because they can. And if you click that, it's going to give you a value. This is how long frames are. So they're each going to last for 1 frame. Check that out. And that's cool. They're not really pointed the right way, are they? Oh no, I made a mistake. I'm so dumb. I should end the tutorial now. Nuh-uh, I'm not dumb, because check this out. What we need to do is twirl down rotation and hit orient to motion, turn it on. But there's no motion. What are you thinking? How are they going to orient if there's no motion? Watch, just watch. Go to velocity, turn it up to 1. Now there is motion. You can't see it, but it's there. and now the flashes are pointed in the right way. Alright, see? Don't worry, it's cool, bro. It's cool. So that's our muzzle flashes done. We want to change that layer to an add transfer mode. Or depending on your composition, you might want to use screen. Actually, I think I want to use screen. So that's our muzzle flashes taken care of. We want to add some smoke as well while we're doing that. So it's going to be really easy. Just duplicate it, hit enter, call it smoke. Let's open up this smoke particle I made. This is, what did I do to this? Okay, this is from footage created as well. Just a quick smoke puff. I actually really like this clip. I find this to be a very useful clip. I cut off the beginning of it, so it's just going to kind of pop on. I need it to be kind of grayed out, so I added a tint to it, and what does this curves do? Just darken a little bit. Sweet. So we have this new layer called smoke. It's the same as the flashes layer. We'll turn the flashes off for now, just so we're looking at smoke only. We don't want this to be a screen, we want this to be a normal transfer mode. Come down to particle. We still want it to be a sprite, but we want it to be the smoke particle this time. And we don't want it to just last for one frame, so let's turn the frames up. How long is this composition? Okay, our smoke particle lasts for 2.7 seconds. So we can actually just use that number for life. Let's make it 2.7. And now that's long enough for the smoke to stay on screen. And we don't want a random still frame. No. We want it to start at birth and play once. So every time this pops on, it's going to play. Okay, looking kind of dumb so far. It's getting too smoky, so let's take the opacity of the particle and turn it down a little. And this is better than just turning down the opacity of the layer, because this is going to allow, it's going to make the smoke transparent, but it's going to allow it to build up on itself still, which is great. That actually looks good, but you can even add some opacity random to it if you want. Whenever it makes sense to add randomness, I always do it. And I kind of want the smoke to drift forward in the direction we're shooting, so just add a little more velocity. Smoke might be a little bit big, so we can pull the size down. And we still have that size random. You can set it whatever you want, whatever works for your shot. And honestly, I think that's it. That was pretty easy. So we can turn back on the flashes. You can put the smoke below the flashes, so your flashes will still be bright. They won't be covered up with smoke. Alright, cool. Now this is where it gets crazy. We need some dirt bursting up off of the ground, right, where these bullets hit. So I have this dust puff here that I've created. Let's see what kind of work went into this. So here's a clip from Footage Crate, which is a smoke. Not a smoke, it's like a particle hit, right? And I changed the timing of it a bit, so it kind of pops up, and I added a little bit of scale to it, so it pops right up like that and fades away. And then I wanted some grass popping up too, so I made this with a particular, just a particle shooting up like that. Boom, whatever. So that's my, I tinted the dust dirt color. So that's my little dirt particle right there. Let's put that in the scene. I'm actually going to duplicate the particular bullets layer for this one. So let me solo that. Now you can see what we have here. These bullets that are like sitting on the ground here, we're going to use that for this one, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. So you want to change the particle type to a sprite, just like before, and the texture is going to be the dust puff. We're actually going to turn the size of that down to 0 and the opacity down to 0. So you can't see these particles, but they're there. And what we're going to do is head up to this aux system part and hit emit at bounce event. And particles per collision, we just want 1. The life we're going to make long enough, so let's see how long that dust puff composition is. It's about 20 frames, so let's change the life to, half a second is fine. And we don't want any velocity on these. We want the type to be the same as main. And here we go. Now you can see these little dust puffs are popping up wherever the bullets are hitting. They're not lasting long enough. Sorry, that composition was 20 seconds long, not 20 frames long. So there we go. Now those dust puffs are popping up exactly where we want. They're not big enough. Let's turn that up. And we can twirl up in this one that's called Randomness, and we can randomize the size of them so they're all a little bit different. And if you want them facing different directions, you can't do that in the aux system settings. You got to pull back up to the particle settings. I know this is a little confusing. Go up to rotation and hit random rotation and bring that up a little bit. And now they'll be pointing in different directions. And you'll see some of them are kind of pointing at me. That's no good. We want them pointing away. So whatever you decide on random rotation, if you decide like you want it at 5, then take this rotate Z and change that to 5 also. So now some of them will point straight up and some of them will point away, but none of them will point at me. And if you want them even more pointing the other direction, change it to something else like 7. Boom, there we go. Just for superstitious purposes, we'll change the random seed. Always a good practice. And now check it out. Here's what we got so far. Alright, see, you got those ground hits popping up. So these dust puffs, you can actually add a shadow to them that actually matches the perspective of the scene. Well, how do you do that, you ask? Well, you guys are the most. Let's duplicate that layer, rename it to floor hits shadow or whatever. Bring it below the floor hits. Bring it below everything, really. We're going to change the particle type from a sprite to a textured polygon. And now turn the random rotation off because it's going to mess this up. But we can rotate it on X 90 degrees. And now those particles are just laying on the ground. And as you can see, my shadow points kind of backwards, so we can rotate them on Y as well to make the shadows point backwards, right? And now on this whole layer, we're just going to add a fill effect to it and select a dark color from my actual shadow. That's the color that shadows are in this scene. And we'll change the transfer mode. There's a couple options here. You can change it to darken, which, in this case doesn't really do anything. It just looks like the same color. So actually I'd rather change it to multiply so we can have some detail in those shadows. But now they're a little too dark, so if you hit T, that'll call up the opacity, and you can just turn it down. And how easy was that? Now we have some 3D shadows. I was kidding before. I love you guys. You guys are great. So we need some little bullet holes in the ground here. I've pre-prepared a composition for that as well. And this one's actually a little weird. So this is the earthquake hole clip from Footage Crate, which is really cool. It's not quite what we needed though. If you put this over some concrete or something, it'll look like an earthquake, man. You see how this is transparent? That's going to take your texture of the concrete, and we got this hole here, and it'll make it look like there's a hole in your ground. What I did was I right-clicked, go up to time, hit freeze frame, and then applied a simple choker to it to get rid of those cracks around the edges. And then I applied this effect called roughen edges, and I changed it to spiky, and just turn up the border, and you can mess with the scale if you want. And that's just to simulate like grass hanging over the edge. So that's what this is, but I'm missing part of the hole here, so I just duplicated it and masked out another part of it and laid it over like that. So now that's a bullet hole. We repurposed that clip to something completely different. That's cool. So let's go back into our main comp, bring in that bullet hole, turn it off. You guys know how to do this. We'll duplicate the floor hits because it's the most similar to what we're trying to do. Call it bullet Holes spelled correctly. That needs to be below everything, even the shadow. And very simply, we'll leave it as a sprite, but we want it to be the bullet hole composition, and we want it to be a random still frame so it doesn't animate. And we do not want this random rotation. That is bad. Turn rotate Z off, turn random rotation off. Now they're just too big, so we'll change the size down. We need to do that in the aux system because these are still auxiliary particles. All the ones on the ground are going to be auxiliary particles. So we'll change the size way down. That's the size randomness. We could leave that up. Small, 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 tiny. And then we want our life to be longer than the composition, which it already is. So that's cool. So now those are just going to pop on whenever the dust pops up, and they're going to stay there forever. Those are a little sharp. They don't really match the rest of our scene. So, I mean, these things are as sharp as you guys are, because you guys are so smart. Let's add a fast blur. Blur it up 1, and then they're looking a little dark. So if we add a brightness contrast, we can turn up the brightness a little bit, and maybe turn the contrast down a little bit. And bada boom, bada bing, there we go. Let's add some shells popping off the side of that gun. So I have this shell particle here. How did I make this? Well, I have this clip from Footage Crate that is a slow motion shell twirling across the screen, and all I did was just animate it. Turn on this button here called the title action safe, so that you can see the middle of your screen, and that makes it really easy to animate this to stay in the exact middle of the screen. For this, we're going to actually need a new emitter. So let's duplicate the emitter that we have now, and we'll call this one shell emitter, and we'll duplicate, I think, the particular bullets one. Call this shells. Now the other systems are not going to use this emitter because it doesn't start with the word emitter. Remember when I told you about that before? It starts with the word shell, so they're going to ignore it. We're going to turn on our shell particle system here. Come to options and change this word, light name starts with, to shell. And now we want to just come down to this shell emitter here, change the rotation of it so it's pointed at us. It's not going to hurt you, don't worry. And you remember how we put an expression on the rotation to make it move around? That's not going to be good in this case, so we'll just delete that. And then you can move it on the x-axis and on the y to where you need it. Okay, and so let's change our particle in this. It's going to still be a sphere because it's the invisible bullets. Change that to a sprite. Our texture for that sprite is going to be the shell particle. And now we have these particles as being small and invisible, right? So we need to change that in our size or in our opacity. Oh, and our velocity is going to be ridiculous, so let's turn that down. There they are. They need to be more voluptuous. They need to go faster. Cool. Oh, they're coming right at us. Check this out. Let's all right, check it out. I'm just gonna twist this a little bit. Whoa, they're coming right at us. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that sweet? It is sweet, but it's too sweet. It's not right for this shot. The reason these are stretched out looking is because we have that motion blur still on with the opacity boost. So let's go into the render settings and just turn that opacity boost off. Cool, so they're still not shooting fast enough. They need to shoot kind of fast, just not as fast as the bullets. There we go. And now let's go to the physics twirl down, and add a little gravity. This is always going to be a fight. I'm just turning the motion blur off so we can see what's going on. Okay, here we go. The velocity was too crazy. I don't know what I was thinking. So So it's best to have gravity at 100 because that's just more realistic. So we can turn our velocity off from there, just work from 100 gravity. That's too much. We don't want them at the edge of the screen, we want them kind of at this part. And you know, they're disappearing because we don't have our timing right. Let's change it from current time to random still frame. So now they'll stay on the ground where they're supposed to. And they're going in a straight line here, which before we changed with random rotation. In this case, we're going to change it with random velocity. So change the velocity random, just change it, man. And you also, let's turn on our velocity from motion as well. Just a little bit, I think that's going to help. They're not quite shooting the direction I want, so we'll find the shell emitter and we can just rotate it back a little bit so they shoot this way. Maybe up a little bit so they shoot more up. I think that's the smart way to do it. Cool, man. So there's how that looks in context. Let's go to the bullet holes and just copy the fast blur and the brightness and contrast, same effects, and just paste them to the shells. That's the lazy way to fix this. That way they look better in the scene. Whoops. Turn off those bullets because those are ridiculous looking. And I want these shells to bounce a little bit. Yeah, so let's go to particular. We already have it set to bounce, but our bounce is turned off. Or it's turned to stick. We actually want it to be bounce. So let's see what that looks like. Now they're bouncing a bit. But keep in mind we're on grass here. We're not on concrete, so they're not going to bounce that much. So let's turn it down, yo. So now they're bouncing a little bit. Our bounce random is going to help with the random placement of them as well, so they're not in so much of a straight line. We don't really want them to slide because you don't really slide on grass. I mean, a little bit. Like they're tumbling. Alright, that's good, bro. So here's what that looks like in context. See, we got those bullets flying out. I'm pretty happy with this. But, you know, what I want is some light kind of reflecting onto my body from the muzzle flashes. But unfortunately, that is just impossible to do with particular. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Let me show you how. Let's duplicate our footage and pre-compose it. We'll call it light. Open that up. And here we go. Let's just add a quick solid. And we're going to rotoscope a little bit, which, you know, rotoscoping sucks, but it's not going to be that bad. So let's add a new mask just around my face. I'm going to do each body part separately because that makes it a heck of a lot easier. So start with this. We're going to alter the mask path and just keyframe it. And since this is just going to be some quick flashes, it doesn't have to be that precise. That's why I'm telling you it's easy. Alright, there we go. In the tutorial final video, I will have shown this sped up, just so I'm not wasting everybody's day, but this literally took less than a minute. It's really easy to do. So now let's add another mask, maybe just another solid, and we'll add a new mask to this for the body. And I hope you guys are able to see why this is easiest to do with two different masks instead of just one big one, because it would be like twice the keyframing since the head and the body don't move exactly the same. I mean, as you can see, we haven't really changed the shape of the mask that much, we're just moving it. But if we were keyframing the whole thing as one big mask, that wouldn't be the case. Alright, cool. There's our masks for the reflected, our mask for the light, the shiny, shiny light. So let's pre-compose those. Add a fast blur. Blur that up. Perfect. But you know, we're also going to need some, like a big flash of light that comes off the front of that gun. But guess what? We don't even have to keyframe that because we already have it tracked. So let's just copy this track and paste it in. I'm really glad I'm using this twice because it took a long time to do. So let's just add a new solid to that. Whatever, black like the rest of them. Which I don't even know why I made this black in the first place. But we're gonna add a mask to it. That is a big circle. Just parent that to the null. Okay, and this one we need to feather the heck out of it. Feather it way, way up. Alright, cool. So let's pre-compose all that except the footage. And let's add a fill to it, which is going to be like an orange. I don't know why I colored it black in the first place. And there we go. So here in the main comp, we're going to change that to an add transfer mode. And I'm thinking bring it to the top, on top of everything. And let's duplicate our flashes layer. Bring that above the light. Let's solo that for a second. Now instead of these muzzle flash shapes, we can change it back to a sphere, which is not feathered. Turn the feather down and just turn the size way, way up so that it pretty much fills the composition. See how that's just flashing. Sorry if I gave anyone a seizure just now. Now we'll turn our light back on and use that layer above it as an alpha matte. And now you'll see the light flashes as well, and you'll see that it's in sync with the muzzle flashes. And I think it's too bright and extreme, so we'll turn the opacity down. I'm not sure I like the color of it. Let's take that fill, cut it out, and put it into this composition so we can change it and actually see what it looks like. I think I want it more yellow. Not too yellow though, because yellow is kind of ugly. And actually we can, since light doesn't fall off linearly, it falls off in an inverse square, which if you don't know what that means, I don't know what it means either. But I know that this is not what light looks like. So we can highlight both of these layers, hit shift, highlight both of them, control D to duplicate, move this one up, and we can add a fast blur and blur this one out even further to add a little more glow to it, and we can change it to a different color that's more of an orange. This one doesn't have to be this saturated. There we go. Just add a little white to that, a little gray. Maybe turn it down a little more. Since we have two of them now adding together, we turn this one down a little more in the opacital area. And dude, I think we're done. No, wait, there's more. Remember before how I wouldn't shut up about how great the slider control is and how you can change stuff after the fact? Okay, now here is the render that we just made where I have it keyframed the same way I had a keyframe before. That looks nice. But hypothetically, I'm just going to show you what it would look like if you were to change the values of it. So some of these aren't going to make sense in context of the animation of the motion that I'm doing with the gun. It's just to demonstrate that you can change this. So here's what it looked like at a modest 2 shots per second. This isn't keyframed. And here's what that would look like if you turn it up to 5 shots per second. And here it is at 10. And now just for demonstrational purposes, I went ahead and turned it up to 24, and hopefully now you can see why I told you not to do that. And, just to further ruin the effect, here it is at 50 shots per second, which looks awful, so I think that's a good note to end the tutorial on. I showed you exactly how to make an effect that looks bad. Actually, you know what? Here, let's turn it up to 1000 just to see what it looks like. And as you can see, it was a horrible idea. But do you know what's not a horrible idea? Is to go over to footagecrate.com and maybe check out some more tutorials and download some free assets. See how I stuck that in there? That was pretty clever, huh? Anyway, I've been Adrian from Footage Crate, and that's it for today. Peace.